Dominique Lämmli is a professor at ZHDK in Zurich, and I met her during a conference on artistic research in Riga, where she presented a paper on transcultural possibilities of artistic research structures and methods, which became a topic which we discussed for quite a while then at Riga, because this is also something which is really relevant for our project. Thinking out of the box, thinking out of the cultural framework of Central Europe and out of the framework of artistic research as a genuinely Western model of artistic practice and reflection. Yeah, the big task, I think, is not to implement artistic research in European scientific structures. That's also a big thing. But of course, it's much more important to understand it as a tool that can be used also as a possibility to create a dialogue and cooperation and exchange beyond the European and Western field. And so we are really excited to have Dominique Lämmli here tonight. And Dominique, the stage is yours. Maybe you want to introduce yourself as well a little bit more into detail related to your work and to your to the steps in your career up to now. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Till. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you and have you here. And thank you very much for your interest. I'm very happy to share the Art in Action research with you. And thank you, Till, for the invitation and the kind introduction. I included some of my background into the presentation, so it will come as I go. Just a few words in advance. So I'm a fine art artist, and I also did my PhD in global and area studies. And you will see as I go along how this interconnects. So the Art in Action research is an alternative research approach for art practitioner researchers working on and through art in social cultural settings. So actually, I believe that Art in Action research can also be used more widely, but that's what I have proven in the thesis, that it's a useful alternative approach for art practitioner researchers working on and through art in social culture settings. So at art conferences recently, which I attended, for example, the artistic research in Africa as well, Till, you mentioned Riga. Later on, there was the artistic research in Africa organized by the Wits University. And several colleagues called for a reframing of artistic research. And the suggestions ranged from proposals to implement paradigmatic changes, that is to change the assumptions of existing frameworks, or proposals introducing alternative concepts and theories. Others again called for distinguishing artistic research from other disciplinary research approaches. As you will gather, my own contribution to this debate proposes working with robust methodologies while strengthening the art practitioner perspective. The Art in Action methodology crafting, I call it methodology crafting, is issue-centered, applies-grounded methodology. And I will explain this in more detail. So for the structure today, so in consultation with Till, and as we are in this small group, I propose that I first go through the presentation, that we then have a Q&A session, and I will then invite you to join a co-working space online for a rapid methodology crafting session. And I will invite you to transfer your project research designs into a grounded research design. Or if you are already working with a setting responsive research design, you're invited to share your approach with us and with me. I would be very delighted to hear about your projects as well. So I expect us to transition quite straightforwardly from the Q&A session to the rapid methodology crafting session. And to ensure this happens, I will then post the link while we start the Q&A session in the chat. So I assume everyone here now knows how the chat works, or is there some explanation needed? Please raise the hand if you would like to have some further explanations. And this is not the case, okay, thanks. So with the structure of the presentation, I will start with clarifying some key terms. So that is art in action, localization, global turn, the local global continuum. And this part is quite long, but I find it essential to introduce the bigger picture that led to the development of art in action research. And there also come in this transcultural, transregional aspects still that you have been mentioning. And I will also briefly define the terms paradigm, methodology, theories, and methods as I applied it in my research. Second, I will again briefly discuss my practice-based activities since 2008 and how these led to the theoretical work which resulted in developing the art in action research. And finally, I will introduce the core principles of art in action research. So let me start with the term art in action. I started using the term art in action about 10 years ago when talking to colleagues in Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, and Hong Kong about how their practices are embedded in real life contexts and settings. I realized that existing terms such as participatory art or socially engaged art pose challenges. And these terms prompted lengthy discussions about Western conceptions of art and their limited views. So these protracted theoretical discussions thus moved conversations away from the location-specific activities I wanted to know more about, reflecting on how I might better indicate my intention to discuss these specific activities. I eventually came up with the term art in action. In practice, this provided direct access to conversations on practical matters. And thanks to its positive effect, I have been speaking of art in action ever since. So let me give an example of such practical matters. These include how artistic ideas and strategies are integrated into real life settings and community dynamics. In that respect, our discourses are still too general and do not provide detailed accounts of what works in particular settings. So Chativani Art Factory, for example, an art collective based on West Java and the Documenta 15 Lumbung member, integrates artistic ideas and strategies into participatory dynamics that empower community agency and bond people from all walks of life. I believe that discussions on such concrete aspects of working on and through art in sociocultural settings will substantially contribute to furthering such practices. Importantly, art in action does not prescribe which art activities are included or excluded. It encompasses highly diverse activities. To share some examples, it goes from complaint choirs, where people come together to sing and hum complaints to their government, to nurturing communal farming and self-organization, thus drawing attention to the regional development plans of governments and investors, Some collectives do it with other cultures by providing labs for bio or other hacking. And equally popular is the reenactment of historical events. So these are just a few examples of how art practice worldwide is used to address and alter real life conditions. In a nutshell, so art in action refers to practices addressing real life challenge on and through art in social cultural settings. And with that, contributes to co-creating a livable future. And to highlight this once more, art in action, the term, is a strategic term. This means it does not predetermine what is included or excluded. We know much has been written about art embedded in social cultural settings, with scholars revealing in-depth insights into working with art in social cultural settings. Many exhibitions worldwide have been dedicated to this topic. I've just mentioned Documenta 15. There has also been, for example, in 2017, the AiAR Biennial in Taipei, who was focusing on how artists are actively and jointly changing their living environments. What has been missing, however, are methodologies and methodological debates on how such activities can be researched from an art practitioner perspective, considering the global turn. And this is this is the central aspect. How do we do that considering the global turn? Our highly interconnected world has pressured established ways of looking, researching, and thinking about the diverse realities we live in. And this brings me to the concept of globalization. In the early 1990s, Roland Robertson, a sociologist and global theorist, introduced, which he has taken from the Japanese economic writings, he introduced the concept of globalization into sociological research. Applying the concept of globalization means focusing on the relational tensions and relationships and intertwined dynamics of global and local dispositions and processes. Taking globalization into account is especially important in the arts, where conflicting notions of art are still evident. On the one hand, art in a narrow sense, which excludes most art production worldwide, yet claims to have an universal reach. On the other hand, an emphasis on the fact that art always relates to context and settings, and thus is pluriverse. And the term pluriverse means that there are various ways of being in the world. So in research, feminist, decolonizing, and indigenous voices have been critiquing existing research frameworks for decades. In addition, and because of the intensified globalization movement since the 1970s, scholarly work since the 1980s has increasingly dealt with the phenomenon related to globalization processes, leading to several so-called waves of global theories. And the prevailing insight is that there are varieties of globalizations, as emphasized by Riebein and Schwengel in their book Global Theories, published in 2008. Moreover, globalization studies gradually evolved into global studies. And Nidewin Petersen describes this as a methodological shift. Whereas globalization studies were anchored chiefly in disciplinary theories and protocols, global studies work with interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary multi-level research frameworks and aim to reframe existing discourses. For instance, Eve Darian Smith and Philip McCarthy offer a detailed account of global studies and methodologies in their 2017 book called The Global Turn. For them, the global turn refers to, and I quote here, a collective turn of the disciplines to engage with contemporary and historical processes of globalization, end of quote. So actually the term, global term, I took it from their writings. So multi-level research frameworks are of course not uncommon in artistic research. In addition to that, global studies call for keeping sight of the big picture, the global dispositions, when dealing with a specific issue. And Darian Smith and McCarthy call this shift a turn to the local global continuum. Furthermore, global studies emphasizes the need to retool the assumptions underlying research. So especially this last point is significant for practitioner research on and through socially engaged art. The assumptions underlying research must be able to accommodate various understandings of art if they are to be effective in the real world. So let us now turn to the words paradigm, methodology, and method. So the word paradigm, it has diverse meanings. So if you read several articles about methodologies, you find different meanings, like saying it is a worldview, or it is an epistemological stance, or that it is a term for some shared beliefs within some disciplinary groups. However, nowadays, researchers are increasingly trained to look through the lenses of various paradigms, depending on what is needed and what we intend to do. And depending on the beliefs and basic assumptions informing such a paradigm, we see different things, which in turn influences the kind of results we obtain. So in my study on, so this here is, let me go to the next one here, just a short animation. So a paradigm, as I said, it's the lenses, like glasses, through which you look. And depending on which kind of glasses you put on, you see different things. So my study on art in action research, which I conducted from 2016 to 2021, distinguishes paradigm, methodology, and research design as follows. As I just said, a paradigm is a lens through which we access our subject of investigation, and its principles guide methodology crafting. And research design is an umbrella term and includes the type of research, the paradigm, the research question or hypothesis or both, and the methodology. A wide range of research types exist, as you know, including transformative, exploratory, experimental, descriptive, and comparative research. Furthermore, I distinguish an art practitioner perspective and arts-based methods. I will come back to that later. So art practitioner research may include art-based methods as well as other methods from across various disciplines. So that's why I distinguish between the art practitioner stance or perspective and the art-based methods, which are used next to other methods from other disciplinary domains. So in short, as researchers, we approach reality through a paradigm, a lens through which we access a reality. And we then use theories and concepts that help us to work on and configure and analyze and discuss what we see. And we apply methods to gather and to create that data. So here also made a small animation for that. So this brings me to the second part of my presentation, the practice-based experiences and insight that motivated my study on art in action research. I've been making a living as an artist in the since the mid-1990s onwards, selling my work through exhibitions and galleries, undertaking commissions and receiving various grants. In 2008, Martin Scher, an art collector, invited me to collaborate with fellow artists in Malawi in Southern Africa. He asked me to explore art education strategies for a secondary school in Salima, located near the lower half of Lake Malawi. In addition to his interest in my art, Martin probably also had my educational background in mind, which includes art practice as well as studies in philosophy, comparative literature, and educational theory. So I actually have been trained in various disciplines myself, as many of us have been. So following this invitation from Martin Scher, I pursued art-related and art education activities in Malawi over several years. And this work coincided with my appointment as a professor of drawing and painting at the Zurich University of the Arts. One of my ambitions was to connect university discourses more directly to professional practices. So when I make the distinction between academics and professional, academics are the ones who are mainly working within university settings, and professionals are practitioners, also working outside of the university. Professionals also is a term that is used for any craftsmanship or any enterprise, and also research and development that happens outside the university context. So having this ambition to connect university discourses more directly to professional practice, I began expanding theories of drawing and painting and started reading the work of global theorists. But I soon realized that art understandings per se needed to be discussed. And subsequently, to increase my knowledge of various art understandings and practices, I extended my co-creation and co-working activities to various world regions such as Bhutan, Indonesia, Hong Kong, and India. And these many activities took place as part of the FOAFlux research. This was this previous slide here. FOAFlux is a research microhub, which I co-founded with the art and landscape historian Annemarie Bucher, who is a senior lecturer, among others, at Zurich University of the Arts and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. So over time, my focus gradually shifted to art in action, which I have also called artists working reality. I initiated and co-organized several workshops and symposia. And during these sharing sessions, I have learned even more about best practices and about the challenges of working on and through art in various regions of the world. And in addition, my many colleagues and art collectives have let me participate in their work. Accordingly, besides first-hand experience, these projects have given me in-depth insights into how artists activate setting-specific dynamics and thus bring about real-life changes and co-create livable futures. When reflecting and writing about my learnings, I then realized that existing art studies and artistic research frameworks did not provide the tools needed to sufficiently address either the learnings or the achievements of working on and through art in social cultural settings. I tried to solve this problem over several years. I explored various theories and concepts, for example, the capability approach, to render visible and discuss important developments in working with art in social cultural settings and how art practitioners thereby contribute to real life changes. Eventually, however, I realized that a paradigmatic change was needed. And my practice-based insights clearly revealed what was missing. Methodologies and methodological debates on how art activities embedded in social cultural settings can be researched from an art practitioner perspective, one taking into account the global turn. Failing to make progress in establishing such an art practitioner research perspective, I began doing transformative research in global studies under the supervision of the global theorist Boyke Rehbein, whose support I'm much indebted to. And this leads me to the third part of my talk. As mentioned, I have developed art in action research using global studies approach. And this comprises 3 theories and 1 concept in my case, in my study. So that's the kaleidoscopic dialectic, localization, transdisciplinarity, and meta-synthesis. I'll leave it by that. Having mentioned these, I'm very happy to go into more detail, maybe through the question and answer session, if anyone is interested to know more about these theories. So the study started with 3 empirical observations. And you probably already have them now in mind, like from what I've been saying before. So 1, working with art in social cultural settings is rapidly increasing worldwide. Accordingly, 2, practical knowledge and know-how in the field are immense. What is lacking, however, and this is 3, research methodologies that enable our practitioners to explore issues emerging from their work environment. So then I formulated the hypothesis on which my study is based. The hypothesis says a paradigm shift in art research is needed to define the principles of art practitioner research, and thereby taking into account the global turn. And achieving this paradigm shift requires following a 5-step process. First, analyzing the paradigmatic assumptions about art and the attempts made so far to overcome these dominant notions. And 2, specifying the critical features of the canonization of art. 3, contextualizing and assessing the limits of existing approaches within art research or artistic research. 4, determine the discussed specifics of practitioner research across disciplines. And then 5, defining the principles of art practitioner research. So the study I showed the slide before is accessible on the eDoc repository of Berlin's Humboldt University, so it's freely accessible. So based on this hypothesis, the chapters following then the introduction and approach deal with you have here the list of, and also the titles of the chapters. They deal with the diversity of art, the canonization of art, the supranational emergence of artistic research, and the methodological features of practitioner research across disciplines. Today, I will not discuss the content of these chapters, but let me instead move on straight to the conclusions that I drew about an alternative paradigm able to consider the global turn. So first, the notions of art, let me go one further, maybe here. So these are the conclusions of the study, and the conclusions also correspond with some of the chapters. So first, notions of art must be removed from the art practitioner research base. Instead, notions of art should be elicited through the research process. And methodology crafting needs to be grounded in the research process, which ought to center on the issue emerging from the work environment. So art in action research concerns real-world observations and aims to produce results and findings directly relevant to the interests of both the researchers, the researcher or the researchers, and the communal environment. The main goal of art in action research is to bring about real-life change. And furthermore, art in action allows integrating diverse understandings of art and diverse knowledge bases. Now, this contrasts with artistic research approaches that work with non-grounded and universal claims of what art is or is not supposed to be. And moreover, the valuing of artworks and the purpose-fitting application of art stances and art-based methods so as to change living environments are diametrically opposed. So we have on the one hand, the non-grounded universal claims of what art is supposed to be or not supposed to be. And we have on the other hand, art embedded within communal practices where the aim is to bring about real life change. And these two goals and aims and perspectives, they do not match. So do we produce work that primarily complies with disciplinary requirements and seeks to climb in these institutional and market rankings? Or is it the work oriented towards bringing about real life change and disseminating art in action strategies? This stands rather than foregrounding the creation of unprecedented interventions as promoted by the art pyramid, values purpose-fitting application, which brings about spirals of participation and real change. So I'm sure we all are aware that the art system, how it is currently functioning, is a pyramid system. We have a lot of artists and we have a selective few that who earn a lot of money. But if we value purpose-fitting application within particular concrete real-life settings, what we are looking for is spirals of participation and real change. So these two stances differ radically in terms of what is relevant for validating artworks and activities. However, the same work or activities may achieve high rankings in both validation perspectives. A good example is the work of the artist and curatorial team of Documenta 15. Also, there were a lot of discussions about it, but they sort of were able to match both goals from within both perspectives. So its vision for Documenta, Ruang Rupas, the curatorial team's perspective, and vision for Documenta involve building a globally sensitive, cooperative, and interdisciplinary art and culture platform. But understanding the dynamics underlying such initiatives requires a paradigm shift along the lines of the one proposed by Art in Action research. So, however, Art in Action research corresponds well with professional art practitioner procedures. Its crafting of methodology reflects how artists and collectives work and develop their projects, even if these are not formulated and written up in terms of a logical argumentation. And as such, Art in Action research narrows the gap between professional and academic work, and thereby supports and guides the crafting and rigorous methodologies. The potential subject matters in Art in Action research, which are placed at center stage, cover a wide field, ranging from questions and problems involving participatory, technical, socio-political, hands-on, tactical, and strategic considerations and investigations. So, for example, if the research issue concerns implementing hydroponic gardens with specific people in a particular living environment. The odd in action research might focus on aspects directly relevant to the setting. For example, locally available material, know-how, resources. It might also contribute to innovating hydroponic systems. Even this is not a requirement. And I think this is important, and also a major shift from what we are pressured to do within university contexts. So placing the research issue center stage means not following predefined protocols. Rather, the research configures its methodology in relation to the issue, the corresponding objectives, and the relevant sites of inquiry and activities. And thus, it applies grounded methodology. This includes critical self-reflection, locating oneself as a researcher and as a professional in the research project, so as to contextualize and explore the ideas and concepts applied in and derived from the project. So while art in action research introduces a paradigm shift in the fine arts and artistic research, grounded methodology is not uncommon in other disciplines. There's, for example, in health studies, Drake and Heath, in a publication published in 2011, where they explicitly note that health practitioner research is research grounded in issues emerging from the work environment. And they provide detailed accounts of the challenges facing insider researchers. The term insider research refers to researchers conducting research in their professional environments, that is, in communities of which they are also part. So Drake and Heath discuss various aspects that need attention, among others, negotiating the diverse roles of insider researchers in practitioner research projects, not least the challenge of being both professionals and researchers. However, Drake and Heath do not conceptualize grounded methodology. And to provide another case in point is sociology, where grounded theory emerged in the 1960s. The publication Awareness of Dying, published by Bonnie Glaser and Anselm Strauss in 1965, reported fieldwork in 6 hospitals in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And they not only addressed patients' attitudes towards death, but also reported on interactions between the hospital staff and patients, and what they called the context of actions. And then in a later publication, one that is now often referred to, published in 1967, which they titled Discovery of Grounded Research, Glaser and Strauss discussed their research approach. So in contrast to existing theories, they generated theory from data systematically obtained from social research. However, in their introduction, they also state that, I quote, "We would all agree that in social research, generating theory goes hand in hand with verifying it. But many sociologists have been diverted from this truism in their zeal to test either existing theories or a theory that they have barely started to generate," end of quote. So I came across that again while preparing for this presentation, and I thought it's really eye-opening, because in methodological discussion, grounded theory is often referred to as this very new alternative way of approaching and thinking about theory in a research process. But then when you look at how they position themselves, what they have been doing, it feels like maybe their publication title, Discovery of Grounded Theory, is a direction to maybe what they've heard from colleagues as a reaction to their research. Because obviously they feel that even if you're working and you have a theory, just going into the field, drop down a theory and use it and test it without evaluating how it actually corresponds with the setting is kind of, should be anyway, a no-go. But that's what they're criticizing. And they say that many sociologists have been diverted from this truism, and their zeal to test either existing theories or a theory that they have barely started to generate, that they approached it in that way. And thus they put a strong emphasis of going into the field, collecting data, and then from there constructing and developing and crafting the theory that corresponds well with the research setting. So grounded theory, and this is true for any theory, provides narratives which serve as orientation points for research. And specific to grounded theory, however, is that it generates narratives from these real life settings. So such a methodology may include existing and grounded theories. Now, so let's, I've jumped over something. So art in action research. Klaus and Strauss, they were talking about grounded theory. So what I'm proposing is that the whole methodology is grounded in a particular setting, not only the theory. So grounded methodology accordingly elicits its methodology from the research setting and project related specificities. And such a methodology may include existing and grounded theories, depending on what best suits a project. So I'm now moving on to the last part, wrapping up my talk. Let me briefly discuss the validity of grounded methodology. Grounding research in issues emerging from the work environment affects understandings of validity. Validity concerns the extent to which research findings are accurate, reliable, and justified. And grounded research understands the validity of research relative to the research question or issue, the project-related configuration of particularities, what is particular to that specific project that I'm working on, and the methods and procedures chosen to investigate subject matter. And if we go back to a feminist writer, Patti Lather, in 1993, she called this procedure a space of constructed visibility. Later in 2011, Drake and Heath emphasized that grounded research includes uncovering what the research does and does not privilege. And correspondingly, project validity is not geared towards some universal standards, but constructed in relation to the research issue, goals, and procedures. So art in action research is issue-driven, and thus its results are particular and non-generalizable, but they are comparable and therefore meaningful for practitioner research. Art drives sociocultural transformation processes, aims at real and sustainable change, and supports participation spirals. Accordingly, more and more artists and people from all walks of life are becoming involved. And this dynamic stands in stark contrast to the traditional art market and institution scheme. And I mentioned it already, to repeat it, I think it's an important point, and I'm sure you are all highly aware of that the way I describe now art in action research mirrors the procedures of our practice and applies these to research. And as such, the theories and methods chosen in methodology crafting are justified in relation to their usefulness for the research project in question, that is, according to their project fitness. So what I try to do, and that's what I propose to further develop working on and with art in social cultural settings, is to strengthen methodology crafting so we can come up with concise, robust methodologies that enable us to realize the research projects in a way we approach them as our practitioners, so that it brings together both our roles as our practitioners, as professionals, and as academics. So this, it's not a very good, it's supposed to be an I. So normally a disciplinary perspective, like also from, established art practices, we'll look, so I take the eye and the glasses, and this here is our subject. And that's how we approach. And the theories, practice, and methods, we've got them. And there's always this notion of art, like in social cultural settings, there's always the question, is it art or is it not art? Well, this question can only appear if we have previously decided what art is, instead of going to look at what is at stake in a particular setting. So that's what I'm proposing, is that we always start with the issue, the question, or the hypothesis. So let's, for example, take that, maybe shall I do it? I'll move it here. So, okay, let's look at Indonesia, Jatiwangi Art Factory. So, for example, one project that they did is they create a whole new, they do identity building around the notion of clay. This has a long story because they are traditionally roof tile makers. There are some really big changes in now the garments industry moving in, and also that the whole West Java area is highly developed. So now it's still quite a rural area, and it will become mega cities. They talk of several cities, I think 13 cities, but it's probably then just one big mega city. So they do run a lot of different projects with art to try to bring people together, starting to think about how they want their region developed, to become active members of co-creating their environments and not just receivers of a top-down development. So coming back to your question, Till, about what kind of art forms are here present. So actually many different ones, because we have the team, the art collective, who was participating as a Lumbu member at the Documenta 15. Several of the collectives of the members have been shown at very well-known biennales and art exhibitions. But then the teams are always comprised of a lot of different people that work together. And in order to make the project fly, they also include politicians and police and military, the punks, the neighbors. So actually already looking at that side, we have a lot of different art understandings. And coming with a predecision of what art is or not is doesn't help if we want to use art and an artistic stance and art-based methods to bond people and co-create livable futures. So then we of course have the problem that we have to elicit these notions of art. I mentioned this briefly. And I proposed that in my thesis. I proposed 5 orientation points. So for example, the first one is wisdom. And I deliberately took wisdom as a reference point and not knowledge bases, because knowledge base is already often associated with university, with Western standards, contradicting more mythical understandings or more cosmological understandings of realities. So that's why we then have to find out, okay, I want to do this project. I want to create flutes together with people and with the school, and then organize a music triangle, which they do. They actually bring together 10,000 people for 20 minutes event. So they go into the classes, with students, they talk about clay, about this demographic changes, they create the flutes together. And then while this is happening, let me see, I probably find it. So these are the kinds of examples that I looked at. And I mean, they are very effectively bringing a lot of people together, bonding otherwise really fragmented societies through artistic strategies and means. And the question whether from a Western conception of art historical discourses, the discussion on, is this now art or is this not art, is contradicting what we as practitioners actually are interested in doing, which is contributing to further our life environments and contributing to shaping the future. Because it's actually all other disciplines are using artistic strategies and practice-based methods in all. I mean, I think art never before has been so influential. So for me, it's really paradox that then within the arts, we are not also emerging into these possibilities and seeing how we can further develop it. So that's then why I propose that we are, as practitioners, we have the issue, and then we see, okay, so for this particular project, who are my stakeholders? And maybe there is a theory that helps me to think further about what I want to do and to reflect on it. So a theory is nothing else than a narration that gives me some key points how to look at something, and makes me aware that maybe this is also something that I should look at. Or I don't find that theory, and then I'm maybe coming up with an own one or a concept or some criteria which I want to take into consideration in the project. Then I have the material, the techniques, the knowledge formation, and the histories. And then I construct which materials I'm using, which strategies I'm using, where which theory helps me to take care maybe of participatory processes. And this then is formalized in a methodology. Mm-hmm. So what's the big difference between research and a practitioner not formalizing it in research? I mean, from all the practitioners that I know, they reflect a lot. So they do actually also all these considerations. They think about the network, they talk to people, they try to figure out with whom can we work, where is which solution needed that we can achieve our goal. And then they have an idea and they follow that, and then they evaluate whether this is actually working or not, and then maybe take another turn. So a methodology does exactly that, defining, but in words and written down and formalized. When do I do what do I need to look at and to take into considerations which theories help me that I keep this and this in mind, and so on.